Today we'll be taking a look at The Substance, starring Demi Moore, which surprisingly isn't a documentary about her past addiction problems. Instead, what this movie really is a movie about the disgusting nature of old people and why it should be illegal for women to age. Written and directed by Carolee Fargeet, who was also behind the movie Revenge, a movie about talking out your issues with people, and she's back with perhaps one of the most interesting movies of the year. The movie begins with a simple science lesson on how babies are born, as we see someone injecting something into an egg yolk, causing it to separate and split in two. After curing world hunger within the first 5 seconds of the movie, we see something far more important than people struggling to feed themselves. Hollywood. A Hollywood star is created for someone called Elizabeth Sparkle, and as time passes, much like the human body, the star starts to decay in an accurate representation of my own mental well-being. Many years later, Elizabeth, played by Demi Moore, now films workout videos for a TV network, and for her 50th birthday present, she's let go by the network due to their extreme dislike of middle-aged women, as they're apparently under the deluded impression that young men still watch traditional TV. They're on that Sigma grind set and would rather waste their life watching a female play video games instead. Because of this, Elizabeth ends up getting into a car crash on account of being a woman driver, but also because she wasn't looking at the road, and instead watching her billboard be replaced. Luckily, she survives the accident with no physical injury, with the only thing being injured that day being her self-worth. After being seen by a doctor, and being told that unfortunately the government won't be sending her disability checks for the rest of her life, a medical assistant begins playing with her spine as he's in search of the mythical clitoris. He then tells her that she's a good candidate, and after noticing a birthmark on the man's hand, and trying to compose herself after his spine diddling, she leaves the doctor's office to find a USB stick in her pocket, labelled The Substance. Elizabeth then heads back to her luxury apartment overlooking a city that apparently doesn't believe in hills, before plugging in the USB stick. A video plays, and much like all of those supplement advertisements, it promises a better version of yourself, but instead of receiving various forms of cancer from your non-approved medicine, you receive another form of yourself. So basically still cancer. An injection will divide your cells and release another, younger, more improved version of yourself, because remember, aging is actually a bad thing, and definitely not just a natural part of life. After reading an ad from the production company searching for their new version of Elizabeth Sparkle, she sent an address as well as a keycard to retrieve the substance, because drugs are always the solution. And after retrieving the package from an all-white room, she takes it home to film the weirdest YouTube unboxing ever. Unboxing dark web substance packages at 3 AM. Inside is a serum and a stabilizer for the other self, a device for swapping blood with each other to switch between the bodies, as well as pouches of liquid food to be fed directly into the bloodstream as the other person while they sleep, with there also being strict instructions to stabilize every day and switch every 7 days without failure. So after receiving this random package from a complete stranger, she proceeds to fill up the syringe and inject this mysterious fluid directly into her veins, before falling to the ground in complete and utter agony after injecting the Mountain Dew. Something begins to move around in her back, like a baby but backwards, before her pupils start to split in two. Her splitting pupils are then followed by her back splitting open, as apparently she's forgotten how to give birth, and this baby is performing its own cesarean. A baby that is in fact not a baby, but another version of Elizabeth, who sees her old body laying on the floor with her back split wide open. Waking up covered in amniotic fluid, like the big baby that she is, she looks into the mirror to see that she's a younger, different version of herself, played by Margaret Qualley, and with the equipment provided, she sews up the wound in the back of her older body, because have some modesty and put that stuff away, before hooking up the body to a bag of the given food to make sure that she gets her 5-a-day Hollywood diet consisting of slightly questionable white liquid. It's inserted directly into the bloodstream to minimize the flavor of salt. The next day, the new version of Elizabeth begins to bleed from her nose because she's been picking it too much, so is forced to use the stabilizer with an extremely large needle to remove spinal fluid from her other self before injecting it into herself. Sharing is caring. Now give me your spine juice. She heads to the production company to audition for the role that she was actually just fired from, as she applies to be the new version of Elizabeth Sparkle, which she technically already is. She tells them that her name is Sue, which apparently wows the casting agents to the point that she's immediately given the job from the very man who just fired her. And that's what you get for being old. The days then pass as she's attending to Elizabeth and making sure to feed her regularly scheduled vein slop, and within those few short days, thanks to the substance, she's regained everything that she lost and more. And after the 7 days are finally up, it's time to switch back. So she performs the scientifically proven way to move consciousness from one body to another, a blood transfusion. Waking back up as Elizabeth to the sight of some naked chick unconscious in her bathroom, she starts to plan out the days on the calendar as she's literally counting down the days to return to Sue instead of making the most of what she's got now and enjoying life. But as soon as those 7 days come around, once again, she feels on top of the world. And after a nice peaceful 7 days rest for Sue, she wakes up feeling a bit like a religious extremist, so decides to start destroying stuff. But in this case, the destroying has a purpose. She's going to create a pitch black room behind her bathroom with no sunlight, so she can begin her transformation into a vampire by storing the other unused body inside as they get weaker and weaker by the day thanks to a vitamin D deficiency. And after creating her Epstein cupboard to store her women inside, Sue becomes an overnight success, and the ratings are exactly what they needed as she successfully managed to replace Elizabeth. And now she's finally defeated her biggest enemy, herself. Once that loser's been dealt with, Sue decides to go out partying, despite it almost being time to switch back, but following the rules of this miracle drug that's done exactly everything it said it would, just doesn't seem like something she wants to do. So she decides that she'd rather not and brings a man home with her, a man who she then proceeds to bleed all over in a strange mating ritual, because she's just a bit weird like that. So wanting a little bit more time for herself, she uses the syringe to remove more stabilizer fluid, as apparently that guy isn't the only one getting drained tonight. And after heading back to carry on with her new friend, he unzips her top, while a pile of her insides fall to the floor. I don't think that's what she meant when she said get all up in my guts. Waking up the next day as Elizabeth without a pile of guts in her living room, indicating that it was either a hallucination or that guy was just very hungry, she looks down to see that her finger is looking a bit stanky. She's got old person all over it. After trying to wash the old off, she calls the number provided with the substance for the man on the other end of the phone to explain what's been used on one side has been lost on the other. And much like all of those really weird, strange things you did as a teenager that keeps you up at night, there's no reversing it. So she goes to pick up her refill package and sits in a diner with an older gentleman who tells her that 7 days are a long time. Looking at his birthmark and really not being a fan of men in general, she denies knowing what he's talking about because stop talking to me, old man, while realizing he was the medical assistant who recommended she started using the substance. Uncomfortable in the presence of men, she leaves, and once back as Sue, she goes in to film another episode of her workout show when suddenly a large bump appears on her bump, but when she checks right after, it's gone. After the cancer is enabled invisibility mode, she excuses herself to the dressing room and can feel a large mass beneath her skin. And considering that her body is in fact not a church, a mass has no business being in it. She's able to push her lovely lady lump all the way up through her body and towards her belly button, where she then just simply reaches inside of it as one tends to do before pulling out a chicken leg. Now that's just efficient use of space. Suddenly, she wakes back up as Sue, as we've skipped over the 7 days with Elizabeth, with her once again not sure if what she just experienced was a hallucination, or if she was just on the carnivore diet. Elizabeth has been doing nothing but devouring food while it's been her chance to be awake, including a whole chicken. It is hard to keep that protein in when Sue keeps pulling it out. And after heading back into work, she's called into a meeting with the head of the production company, Harvey, and due to the show's ratings being absolutely through the roof, she's being asked to film the network's biggest show, their New Year's Eve show, that goes out live to 50 million people in 3 months from now. Not being one to miss an opportunity, but being one to blatantly disregard the rules. Just like that time she created the crusty finger, Sue begins to abuse the substance for a much longer period of time, with the injection site in the back of Elizabeth becoming infected and beginning to fester, something which doesn't deter Sue from draining stabilizer fluid from her back because she needs her old people juice. Eventually, Sue gets some time off and switches back to Elizabeth, who is now looking a little more old lady-like. To each their own, I suppose. She's stuck in her chair as her leg has stopped working on account of her being an old lazy woman, so she's forced to snap it out of place in order to be able to use it again. She then starts manically cooking about 15 meals in one time, because it never really hurts to be prepared, all the while watching Sue on a late night talk show and being absolutely enraged by everything she says. She watches as Sue mocks Elizabeth for being older now, so responds to this statement in a rather rational and mature way by putting her fist in a chicken. After showing that chicken who's boss and cooking without her BPD medication, she switches back to Sue, who then discovers that the entire apartment is completely covered in food and that all of the windows have been covered up with newspaper, which have been stuck on with raw egg for the sweet scent of salmonella. After Elizabeth's attempt at cooking girl dinner, Sue decides that she's not going to switch back to her anymore, and instead she's going to remove an extreme amount of stabilizer fluid from her back, because much like most things in life, old people too can be abused. And it skips ahead to 3 months later, and Sue is still keeping Elizabeth locked in her hidden room, and it's the day before the New Year's Eve special. But when she once again goes to retrieve some liquid from Elizabeth, she gets nothing but a mix of pus and rotting insides come out. Not exactly in the mood for a snack right now, she calls the substance supplier, who tells her that she's going to need to let the fluid regenerate by switching back with Elizabeth. And after feeling unwell due to her being low on old lady juice, she makes the switch back to Elizabeth before looking in the mirror to see the horrifying sight of an old person. She panics and wants to put a stop to this, despite looking like one sneeze away from cardiac arrest, and while looking like the hunchback of Notre Dame, she calls up the supplier and tells him that she wants to stop the experience. She's given the euthanization kit, which has been renamed to the termination kit thanks to those darn liberals, and sticks it in Sue's heart. She's almost done pushing it all the way in, but starts to regret this self-killing murder and uses the blood transfer kit to pull all of the naughty blood out of her heart, because I'm sure that's exactly how it works. And that's exactly how it works, because suddenly Sue wakes up, despite this being something that was never meant to happen. They both just kind of stare at each other for a while, or themselves, I'm not really sure, and Sue spots the termination syringe, and not liking the idea of being treated like a pit bull after it smelled a weakness on a toddler, she attacks Elizabeth. In a show of elder abuse, she quite literally abuses this elder, before repeatedly hitting her head against the bathroom mirror, so she'll no longer have to look at old people. And apparently, Sue went Super Saiyan in the other room when we weren't looking, as she then kicks Elizabeth across the room with ease, making her look like a pensioner with levitating abilities. Once Elizabeth's down, she puts an end to her by repeatedly kicking her in the ribs. Not the most efficient way to take her life, but certainly one of the most fun. And that's what life's all about at the end of the day. Having fun. With that minor inconvenience now out of the way, Sue heads to the studio to get ready for the New Year's Eve show, and starts to feel unwell, due to the other part of her not being able to feel anything anymore. She excuses herself to the restroom to do a little dye, but instead she can't help but pull her teeth out due to how satisfying it is, because once you pop, you simply can't stop. Despite not being in the original body, she remembers the activator that she used while she was still Elizabeth to create the separated version in the first place. Her teeth, nails, and even ear begin decaying and dropping off from her body, as she's then forced to run home, hoping that her feet don't suddenly decide to fall off before making it to her bathroom. After finding some more fluid in the jar, she once again injects herself with the fluorescent Mountain Dew and collapses to the ground due to the diabetes hitting. She manages to wake up, but now next to Sue, before looking in the mirror to see an abomination. At least that's what my mother would call me after seeing me. She's become a disgusting hybrid. Sue is in the front and Elizabeth is in the back, with them both looking like late-term conjoined twins. They've been transformed into what the movie calls Monstro Eliza Sue. Now that's not a very nice way to talk about women. Anyway, she decides to put her dress back on, force earrings into the side of her fleshy head, before supergluing a picture of Elizabeth to her face like a real-life Snapchat filter. Except nothing like that. After taking the term going beast mode a little too literally, she waddles her way back to the studio, where she's somehow let back into the building, before finding her way to the stage, dragging a pile of placenta with her as she goes. The live show begins, and with the spotlight now shining directly onto her face, the paper cutout falls off, and everyone's shocked to learn that Elizabeth has actually been a secret undercover monster this entire time. Her head then starts to split open, and out plops a breast onto the floor for the entire world to see. Disgusted at the sight of women's anatomy, people in the crowd begin to scream and panic before someone picks up a mic stand and uses it to take her head clean off. But channeling her inner womanly abilities, she's able to grow another one. Her arm then snaps off and she begins spraying the crowd with gallons of blood, with her then spinning around in a circle, covering absolutely everything in the room with her own inside liquids. Not really enjoying the vibe in here anymore, she makes a run for it, but under the pressure of all that tremendous talent, her leg explodes, as she then falls to the ground, doing her best impression of Humpty Dumpty, and breaks into pieces. Elizabeth, who was attached to the back, somehow survives as merely nothing more than a head attached to a pile of flesh, and is able to crawl her way over to the Hollywood star where the movie began, before disintegrating and being swept away, with the moral of the story being, we're all fleshy lumps who will disintegrate and be washed away. Before this video comes to an end, I'd like to just give a massive shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, the people who go out of their way to continue to support the channel every month. If you're interested in becoming a YouTube member or a patron yourself, not only are you just generally being a great support to the channel, but you also get access to a few little perks, like being able to join the private Discord server, where you can then see uncensored versions of all videos going forwards. So starting off with this week's new YouTube signups, a massive thank you to Joseph T, Olim Olim, Haley Last Name, Tea Coffee, Zoninger, Sneaky Lupine, Element Supernova, The Mall Fiend, Dro22310, Alec Bays, Josh Hawkins, Fill Your Cup Podcast, PC Van Der Veen, Tobler98, Velti Alum, Chaos Freak, Pacey02, Fringe Oisberg, Penta Shurikens, Separates, Oscar FN, Haruki, Enfant Few, Usual Villanuva, Yanis D. Buell, Gangaro Horror, Istian, Fat Monkey, Dr. Cobalt, A Flying Man, Andre Costin, Krav Amps, Ekrixi, Jonas Hurst, Christopher, Nagzebi, Bron Early Official, Skylake 1, Abajif Nair, Zagualera, Final Generation 1, Dr. Cry, Donomic Olhoff, Gion, Super Mr. 30, Desab, Riley Jane, Alex Paul, Tired Moth, Gotti, Laughable Genius, Pickles McBangbang, Kevin Spodniak, Austin Keep, Train Conton, Rick Daniels, Oversoul Gaming, Hakura Haruki, Nikki Shojin, Dimus Diamond, Akimbo, Sebastian Hancock, Caitlin Marie, Rando Comrade, Ali M, Spider Smith, Oggy Poggy, Skirt Reynolds, James, Chiblissi Lasua, Saucy, Thick Bladesmith, Rectangle, Bruh, Multiphilip 95, Turbo, Gaudi, Placeholder Text, Celogram, Tyler Andrews, Rebecca L, Yu Chan Lee, Stoic Platypus, Yup It's a Vibe, Chris Jericho, Thanos Gaming, The Last Final Girl on the Left, The La Yarad, Astro Zamudio Morales, Def the Kid 845, Tactical Plays, Acid Horror, Nico Bohr, Steph G, Bonus Big Odudo, Punch Chick, Moses, DVB Crew, Cool Guy 1995, Ida Jaws, Joe Kim 980, Difficulty Spike, DeMaximus, Baldy Tallman, Mr. FPS, Caleb, and Larry Smoke Productions. Now making my way over to Patreon, a massive thank you to Mikey P312, Financially Stable Grenade Man, Damien Hargrove, Big Fan, Brock, Purdue, Dreys, Sojo, Matt Rubio, Henry Zhang, Zabi, Cam Kelly, Erasmus, Chris, Aaron Benulios, Alex Lucero, Marcus Sarin, Jake Collins, Keegan Klein, Jason Miller, Houdini24, Grabbin, John, Alex Marino, Matthew Waterman, Math Red, Esteban Perez Santana, Buster Mutt, Esteban Perez, M, Dan Montmini, Zelorius, Tyler House, Kevin G, Archangel64, Precicia Orbin, Jamie Dilks, Ellie Byerly, Danielle, Joan Moran, A, Jeffrey Paulian, Poo Andrew Gross, Joshua Melanson, Rex K. Bree, Scorpio Contino, Michael LaFay, Jamie Lord, Tyler B, Josh Kime, Max Gordon, Robert Groom, Taylor Harvey, Kalwen Jiang, Solange Varia, Jobro, Chapo Cheepatul, John Baguran, Gavin Black, Drakeo, Logan H, Ikem, Cody Carlson, Elijah94, David Milam, Dylan Harris, Johnny Montez, Rachel Grieve, Joachim Jones, Chris Vuxian, Chris Vacason, Songal, Young Papi Queso, Yusuf Pazada, Hoodin, Sparky, Michael Trudgeon, IoT23, Stephen Duncan, KGFFTT, Zachariah Stevens, Ron T, Gans, Jaden Saunders, Ian Campbell, Lemon Pop, Jalen White, Monty Stows, Dennis Kramer, Sutton McLendon, Emily Milton, Rune, Gaming Since the 90s, Alfonso Hortaliza, Duang Huang, Decamper05, Vape Nation, Zach Warren, William Robbins, Samantha M. Critchley, Rob, Taylor Jones, David, Violet, Stephen Dees, Katie, Stuart Reeves, Benjamin Olsen, Luke Timmel, Sonny, Ryan Storm, Christian Perales, Britt the Doll, Assumed Grub, Rob33, AJ, Jason Craig, Harvey Davis, Luke Philip Prinz, Nick Kreiner, Caroline F, Henry Lapham, Wiznick, Benjamin Musavi, Hamish, 7lop, Ryan Feast, Timothy Heron, Mof H26, Tenny Briss, Feature Shaw, Michael Gulanlewski, One Way, Slicky, Sue, Bear Maniac, Henry Mainsfield, Dalton Bailey, Joshua Manuel, Ruin Hall, I'm Bored, For Titan Siege, Harry Smith, CJ Jones, James, Zotan, Al Wall, Bizarre the Tsar, Wee Wee, I'm Manitani, Romel Moore, Amy Blackmon, Farah, Carla Ivanoch, Sean Halsey, Chris R, John Thompson, Avkaran Singh, Nuvmees, Dino Has Nuggies, Jonathan Stark, Gems, Mikey, Claire Cruikshank, CT3 Plays, Joseph Dinks, and Samuel. So once again, a massive shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, and a big thank you to everyone else for watching.